Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Will. Amazon Prime Video has a good catalog of shows to watch, Spider Noir being a personal favorite. But in this video, we're going to talk about a show that has yet to make development. Let's get into the facts about Amazon's She-Ra. Let's get to it. A live-action She-Ra series is in development, and that's the crux of this video. But I'm sure that, like me, any other Masters of the Universe fan would want to know more. They would need to know more. And that's why I'm here, because in this video, I'm gonna explore everything there is to explore about this new series. So we all know that She-Ra was a staple of 80s cartoons. I mean, she was He-Man's sister who got taken from him and her home and all that, but more importantly, she also got her own movie called Secret of the Sword in 1985, and then an animated series called She-Ra, Princess of Power, also in the mid-80s. In recent years, she became even more beloved after Netflix rebooted her in She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, which ran for 3 years from 2018 to 2020, and won big praise for its character work and representation, and also managed to pick up an Emmy along the way. Amazingly, Amazon MGM Studios now says it's developing the first ever live-action She-Ra series, said to be a completely new take on the character. So back in September 2021, it was revealed that Amazon was, quote, in the early stages of development, unquote, on a live-action Princess Adora aka She-Ra series. But they were still discussing it at that point, and it did not necessarily mean that it was greenlit yet. But yeah, what it did mean was that scripts and pitch material were being worked on, and that in itself was a pretty big deal if you ask me. And not just for She-Ra, but for any show that wants to see the light of day. We also learned that it was a joint effort between Amazon and DreamWorks Animation. And if you paid any attention to the Netflix show, you'd know that DreamWorks was also the studio that brought you that particular installment of She-Ra. Additionally, what we know about the planned live-action series is that it's gonna be standalone and won't have any connection with the previously existing She-Ra installments, be it the 2 animated TV shows or the movie, which in turn means that this one would not be a continuation or a sequel of the Netflix timeline, or any other timeline for that matter. For the first few years, news was paper thin, and after the 2021 update from September, there was no chatter online. However, things started to move forward a few months later. So in early 2022, Amazon announced that Nicole Kassell, who, by the way, has worked on Emmy-winning IPs like Watchmen and Westworld as a director, would direct and executive produce the pilot episode for the live-action She-Ra series. Now, apart from Watchmen and Westworld, Nicole Kassell's credits include The Leftovers and several other noteworthy stuff, and because of this, even the skeptics agree that this was a reassuring sign for She-Ra. Kassell herself hasn't publicly made any statements about She-Ra yet, but her attachment only means that Amazon is serious about their new show. But then, after this update about the director, there was again radio silence for quite a while, until the end of October. So probably the biggest update about the new live-action show came in October 2024, when Amazon announced Heidi Schreck had been booked to serve as the show's writer, and in fact, she is also set to co-executive produce the series. Schreck is known for the Tony-nominated play What the Constitution Means to Me, which has now become an Amazon film, by the way. And not just that, she has also been an active and successful writer who has writing credits on shows like Billions and I Love Dick. And with Miss Schreck's involvement and her strong story skills, you can rest assured that the She-Ra series will have a seriously and sincerely character-driven vibe to it, complete with a combination of fantasy and real emotion, instead of simply banking on nostalgia for views. Alongside Kassell and Schreck, the team includes DreamWorks Animation, who would be executive producing as they did with the Netflix series, and of course, Amazon MGM's own producers. For example, veteran producers like Robin Sweet are also attached to the project, and that DreamWorks will help shepherd the story. But yeah, I must note very categorically that this live-action project is clearly a big franchise play for Amazon, especially after the recently released He-Man movie, which was directed by Travis Knight. Firstly, Travis Knight himself said that She-Ra will play a huge part in his future plans. But this was before the Masters of the Universe movie was released, and I would have discarded such statements, but then the Nicholas Glitzine film had multiple mid and post-credit scenes, and one of them had She-Ra in them, which clearly means that Amazon and maybe Knight himself, has plans to get She-Ra before our screens as soon as possible. So it would be safe to say that all signs point to Amazon seeing She-Ra as a valuable jewel in its new Masters of the Universe crown. Interestingly enough, or rather crucially enough, Amazon has stressed on one very important fact time and time again since 2021, and it's that this new series is going to be entirely its own story. And naturally, one should not, in any fashion, expect a season 6 of Princesses of Power or any direct sequel to Noel Stevenson's series. So, in effect, this one's a reboot of the She-Ra IP, but I know one thing for sure. See, the Netflix series severed all connections between She-Ra and He-Man. Adora was not Adam's long-lost twin who got abducted in her infancy and delivered to Hordak. That one dealt only and only with She-Ra. But the Amazon MGM show will not be doing that. They will keep She-Ra in the Masters of the Universe, so you can have yourself something on the lines of the original 80s setup, albeit one that's been reimagined in live action with new story points and some old villains, but also some new villains. And it makes sense. I mean, Amazon did spend a lot of money building He-Man and his universe, and now, when it's time to reap the crop or milk the cow, they would go all hands in. But of course, the tone and style will also change, and probably won't remind you of any of the previous iterations. Moving on, with very few details surfaced as of now, we don't really know what the likely story could be. However, Amazon's official description calls it, quote, an epic fantasy series about an orphaned young woman who leads a revolution to save her planet from annihilation, unquote. That is basically the classic She-Ra lore we have known since the time He-Man was transformed into a prince from a barbarian. If you look at it historically, you'll notice that the story in both the 85 show and the Netflix reboot is that Adora and her friend Catra are raised as soldiers in the Horde, which, as you may remember, is basically the evil army led by the tyrant Hordak on the planet Etheria. And yeah, initially she sided with the bad guys intentionally. Well, more or less intentionally. But then Adora obtains the Sword of Protection and transforms into the heroic She-Ra. And once she realizes that the Horde guys, especially Hordak, have been pieces of rotting shit, she basically turns against the Horde to free Etheria, and she leads what's called the Great Rebellion to topple Hordak and liberate her world. But I think when the Amazon description talks about She-Ra saving her planet, it might very well be Eternia instead of Etheria. But yeah, there's only one way to find out, I guess. Having said that, I am not an Amazon executive nor the writer, and no matter what I wish for, they'll do what they want to do. And on these lines, I have an update that basically goes in contradiction to what I feel or want. So, the NYU Tisch release on Castle noted that the project is, quote, set on the planet Etheria and follows the story of Adora and Catra, orphans raised to be soldiers in the Horde, unquote. So Catra, who is at first Adora's childhood friend and then turns into an enemy, will also be part of the series. And Catra's involvement in any major way would mean that She-Ra would try to free Etheria of Hordak's wrath instead of Eternia. But that only means that setting might change to Eternia in the later seasons. Remember, Catra's character was very different in the 85 cartoon versus the 2018 reboot, as the latter made her the loving but torn sister figure, and the two girls had the status quo from the very beginning. We can obviously expect characters like Hordak, and possibly Queen Angela, Glimmer, and others from the original She-Ra mythology. But yeah, the fact remains that no official cast has been announced as of yet. Given how these things go, Adora will be at the heart and soul of the show, likely with some new twists on her origin, maybe something that makes her origin darker so that her redemption feels better and more heartfelt on screen. And also, I want to throw some light on the word revolution from the description, which only means that She-Ra might just mobilize the masses and armies on Etheria. But yeah, no specific plot details have leaked beyond that super generic logline and premise. But now with Shrek attached to the script, I think it's only a matter of time before she shapes the story. In interviews about Princesses of Power, showrunner N.D. Stevenson emphasized themes of identity, friendship, and fighting oppression, and it wouldn't surprise me if the live action keeps some of that spirit alive. But we'll have to wait for the actual announcement where they reveal the basic plot points and any other details. The next important thing I want to talk about is the trailer. I know many of you know what I'm gonna say, but I was recently asked by one of my work buddies if there's a She-Ra live action trailer, and I thought he could have that doubt. So could anyone else. But no, right now there's no available trailer. As of mid-2026, which is when this video is being made, Amazon has not announced any cast members, release date, or even a production start date for the She-Ra series. So naturally, there's no trailer or even a teaser poster, since no one has started filming yet. In fact, until now, all we really had was the knowledge that a writer and director had been hired, and anyone claiming to know who will play She-Ra or Catra right now is guessing. But, the Masters of the Universe movie did have a post-credit scene with She-Ra, right? So who was the actress there? Well, in that one scene, Adora was played by Lauren Salieu, so the most logical bet would be that she plays She-Ra in the live-action series as well. But as you know about these things, anything can happen, and playing a blink-and-you-miss-it scene in a post-credit doesn't necessarily mean any sort of guarantee. So, in absence of even a plot, do we have any details on the possible or probable release date? Well, I can fix you up an estimate if that's something you'd be interested in. See, I think Amazon has been waiting to make a move since 2024 on the She-Ra project because they first wanted to have the Masters of the Universe movie released. And now that it's out there, Amazon MGM can start working on She-Ra with more dedication. But there's no confirmation on the cast or anything else. It would take at least a period of 18 months after they start filming. And as to when they start filming, well, your guess is as good as mine. The one positive thing around the show is that there have been no controversies as such, albeit I must agree that the delays have been long. But yeah, fans of the franchise are still worried about the live-action version because usually these IPs have a high risk of falling flat on their faces whenever live action is attempted. You can still find Reddit threads where people worry, why live action? That's not what we wanted. There are many who adore animation and fear live action can't capture the magic, mostly because of budgetary constraints. Take The Boys, for instance. In the comics, the battle where Homelander and Black Noir are killed is a grand event, like the entire US military attacks the White House. But the TV show actually downplayed the finale. And although Homelander's death was satisfactory, it seemed like Amazon was saving the money for its new The Boys spin-off, aka Vought Rising. If you just look at the trailer for Vought Rising, you'll know that it looks rich. But on the industry side, Amazon hasn't run into any reported problems, apart from the fact that it has been just too slow. Having said that, I am kinda okay with the fact that it is Amazon instead of Netflix. Amazon has managed to deliver on some good IPs like The Boys, Invincible, Fallout, and so on. Netflix tends to make everything look similar, but not Amazon, and especially HBO, but I digress. Fantasy with female leads is a hot trend right now, and Amazon is knee-deep into it. They have The Lord of the Rings, and multiple Tolkien spin-offs on the way, Wheel of Time, and so on. She-Ra seems like a good fit for it. It is a recognizable IP. It has ready-made fan nostalgia for the older, more loyal audience, and still has enough scope for freshness for a new audience. But another important question that comes to my mind is what's going to be the legacy if this one comes to life. If Amazon MGM pulls this off, it will be the first time She-Ra appears in live action. And you may do well to remember that neither the '87 He-Man movie nor any other project ever featured her. That's historic in itself. For fans, it'll mean seeing a beloved character in a whole new media. For Amazon, it could extend their Masters franchise and maybe set up crossovers with their He-Man installments. On the other hand, if it fails, by being dull or disrespectful that is, it could sour the brand for a while. Right now though, the hope is that they learn from the Netflix show's success and tropes that worked in its favor, like making Adora relatable, making the theme strong, and giving Catra a good arc. Plus, 5 seasons only means that the audience is definitely there and is interested in consuming more She-Ra content. The only question here is the quality and the honesty to the craft. But yeah, we're still at the whole keep watching this space phase of development. Legacy-wise, She-Ra has a proud history, and this live action is the newest chapter. By the time the series drops, and hopefully so, we'll know what Adora and Catra look like in live action, who's terrorizing Etheria now, and whether it captures the heart of She-Ra. Until then, that's everything we know, and now you do too. If there's a new update, be sure that we'll be exploring it, and if you like the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these awesome videos. Stay safe and have a good one.